Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy here, also known as ETCG1 when I post videos on this channel. And on this channel, if it's your birthday, I'd like to wish you a happy birthday. And I've got a special present for you today, birthday or not. And that's an introduction to this new car that I actually got a couple of months ago. Premium members were in the know about this, but I'm letting you know about it now. So we'll take a detailed tour of my 1994 Legend Coupe 6-speed. Yeah, it's cool, check it out. Now, it didn't always look this good, and I realize it still has a little ways to go, but trust me, it was much worse when I first got it. In fact, it had yucky wheels on it. Well, I consider them yucky. These are the wheels that were on it when I bought it. They are so wrong for the car. They're too wide, and they were coming into contact with the fenders when you were doing hard corners. However, they may find a home on the Element at some point, since I do believe they will fit the Element. It had a fart muffler on it. It had a cold air intake, and it was just, well, I just did not like it. And it had a few other issues as well. However, no rust. Like, that's huge. So no rust at all. So the paint may be a little bit jacked, and honestly, it does have a little bit of hail damage. You might be able to see that a little bit there. So a little bit of hail damage, but no rust to speak of at all on this car. This body is straight. For the most part, a few little marks here and there on the front bumper. But for the most part, the car is intact, and I love it. I have always loved the look of these cars. As of now, it's got 107,000 on it. The interior, well, it's not 100%, but it's not awful either. It's about typical for Hondas of this vintage in my experience, unless you're like super up on maintaining the leather and doing that kind of stuff. But this is the interior. Now, when I got it, it also had an aftermarket stereo, and this is not necessarily the stereo that belongs in here, but I put it in here, and I got it from a company that actually repairs these, and they also retrofit them to have auxiliary ports. So I have an auxiliary port that I can plug my phone into, but this is actually out of a 97 TL. It happens to fit in here, and it has a CD player, a tape player, and also, as I said, the auxiliary. It sounds much better than what was in here originally. Also, they didn't nail down the rear speakers properly, so there was a lot of buzz. I had to do a little modification, and I fixed that as well. But the main feature is right here, and that is the 6-speed. Now, it's not supposed to look like this. This is supposed to be sort of a chrome finish. It's a different finish than this, and it's been peeled away. It's impossible for me to find one of these shift knobs. I've been looking, haven't found one as of yet, but that's, you know, one of the few things in the interior. Otherwise, it is in excellent shape, especially the back seat. The back seat is near perfect. Not only do I have power mirrors, but I have heated mirrors too. Mine also has the memory function where you can set this up to 2 settings, to where you set the seat, you set the mirrors, you set all the stuff into position, and then set this into memory, and then you press and hold your button, and everything goes back into place where you left it. And then if there's another driver that has different parameters, they can use the number 2 section, and their stuff all goes in place when they get in and press the number 2 button. Here's that system in action when you press the button. So now when it beeps like that, it is now in the position where I selected. It's also got heated seats. If memory serves, when you pull this lever, I believe the seat is supposed to also move forward, but there are a couple of things that aren't quite working like they're supposed to, and this being one of them. The other thing is the auto down button here. And I'm starting to wonder, since both of these circuits would be involved with the, it's called the integrated control unit, if I've got an issue with that. There were sometimes issues with those. The passenger seat is also a power seat, but it's not connected up to the seat memory like it is over on the driver's side. This side, however, when you move this forward, you can move the seat all the way forward by moving the switch. So it's not automatic, but it's still much easier just to push this switch than to try to reach all the way down here. Check this out. It's even got dimmable courtesy lighting. So you can dial in where you want the courtesy lights to be underneath. Pretty sweet, right? Also for nighttime, it's got lighted vanities when you turn the headlights on both sides. These visors are somewhat unique. Okay, you've got these side ones, but you've also got the center one that goes up above the mirror. Mine also has dealer installed fog lights. It also has an electrically adjusted steering wheel, so you can adjust all these positions here. It also has the ability to move up and away when you exit and enter the vehicle. That's what this does. So you can turn that feature on and off. So you just want the steering wheel to stay where you left it, you turn this off. But if you want it to move up and out of the way when you remove the key, then you turn this on like it is here. Here's that system in action. This is what happens when you remove the key. It also has driver and passenger airbags. It has a motorized radio antenna. It wasn't working when I got it, but I fixed it. It has cruise control and a motorized moonroof. These rear windows also come down. Passengers also have access to switches in the back seat, so they can move these windows up and down themselves if they want. This really is a 6-speaker stereo from back in 1994. I've never really been certain what this is. I mean, it's storage. For what, I really couldn't say. Rear seats also have their own armrest. There's no pass-through in this model though. One of my favorite features about this car is the doors. Now the doors have motorized strikers, and what does that mean? Well, it means that you don't have to slam the door at all. You just close the door and it pulls it closed. Also, you'll notice that seatbelt moves out of the way. I'll show you that in a second. I just love that. But when you open the door, the seatbelt is motorized and it moves out of your way to gain entry. But then when you close it, it moves back into position so you can grab the seatbelt easier. Electronic trunk release. So here's the inside of the trunk. It has additional deep storage over here, and you may notice this CD changer. Now this was a dealer installed option on most of these, and it connected up to the factory stereo, which was just a tape player at the time. It's not working. I think that's because I have a newer stereo in here, even though it's an Acura. It's not the one that originally came in this car, so the DIN cable may not be communicating with it. But this is supposed to work in concert with the stock stereo system. Not many people know about this feature, but Legends of this vintage have what's called winter mode for the windshield wipers. Older first generation Legends had a little switch up underneath the dash that controlled this, but on these later models you just do this. You just pull up and they'll come to rest up a little bit higher, which makes it easier to clean the windshield. And then in the summertime, push it down and they go back into this position. I've also reconditioned these. These got all pitted up and were all shiny and silver, but I painted those black again. Eric, what's under the hood? Well, let's find out. This is the 3.2 liter V6 that Honda used for a really long time. They started this in '91, ran it all the way up through, I believe it was 2004. In fact, this car, if you'll notice, if you may have seen the other reviews that I've done on the RLs, a Legend and RL are virtually the same thing underneath. It's really just the body styling that's different. This is the Type 2 engine. And that means it's got about 20 horsepower over the standard 3.2 of this vintage, which is kind of cool, and made this a little more desirable. This model also came with traction control, which is kind of cool. Now, this, as I stated, came with this ugly cold air intake to start with, but thankfully they had this air box along with it, and I was able to salvage it. So I was very happy to be able to put that back to stock configuration. But the engine itself seems fairly clean. Whatever had been done to this car, and it recently had a timing belt and water pump done, which I'm disappointed about because I would have liked to have done that myself, and I could have made a video for you. I suppose I still can, because those are aftermarket parts. I could go and install Acura parts at some point, but because my goal is kind of to restore it, because it's so close, it's almost there. Now you may look at this and think this car is rear-wheel drive. It is not. It is actually front-wheel drive, and I can show you that configuration a little bit better once we raise this up and look at it from underneath. This car was garage kept for a long time. In fact, it doesn't have a whole lot of stuff down here that's having issues now. There's supposed to be a license plate bracket that goes onto the front here that I don't have, and I didn't want to drill holes into the bumper of this one like I have in other vehicles. This is a nice car, and I want to keep it that way. So I got a little creative with the zip ties so that I could attach my front license plate. It's on there fine and doesn't do any damage to anything. But this is what I was talking about as far as the configuration of the engine. This in the middle here is the oil pan. Behind it, this is our transmission, manual transmission. And there's an output shaft in the transmission here that goes back up towards the engine to this, which is our differential. And yes, it's water cooled, so we have a water cooled differential. It's kind of neat. The manual transmission versions of these vehicles were unique in that they had a cast iron differential. The automatics had an aluminum differential. These cast iron differentials on the coupes were a bit heavier, and I believe that's because they had the manual transmissions. But that's how the configuration works. So engine power goes back here to the transmission. It's then sent back up to this differential. There's actually a drive shaft running through this oil pan. Comes out here over to the left side. And on the right side, you've just got a regular drive shaft over there. So that's how they handle that configuration. One thing about these Legends and RLs that I've mentioned in other videos is the seal that goes between this differential and the transmission. It's called the pinion seal. And that seal tends to, well, it goes bad quite often and you get an oil leak right in this area. I'm happy to see that this one does not have that. But should that happen, you've got to remove the differential to replace the seal. It's quite labor intensive, but the part itself is only, $7, $10, somewhere in that neighborhood. Also, this has separate fluid from the transmission. So when you drain the fluid out of here, you need to replace it. This gets 80W90 fluid. The Honda manual transmission gets Honda manual transmission fluid. The Type 2s were also unique in that they utilized dual piston calipers up front for slightly better braking. My power steering rack boots are kind of cheesed on both sides. I will be replacing them at some point, just not today. I was very happy to see that the struts had not been changed out. So these are the original struts, especially on these Legends. If these are not leaking, don't touch them. The stock struts are better than anything you could ever put onto them. Just leave them alone. Make sure the rest of the suspension is tight and firm, and you're good to go. These Legends and RLs have massive catalytic converters, but the exhaust systems themselves last just about forever, except the flanges. The flanges will rust away before anything. These are stainless steel exhaust, and like I said, they pretty much last forever. Now, this is not the muffler that came on the car when I bought it. I actually bought this muffler off of eBay. It was only like 98 bucks. I was very happy to find it. And now, the muffler that came on here when I bought it was just some sort of aftermarket piece of garbage that I was so happy to get rid of. It just brought the car down so badly. Now, this has the look of stock, but it's not quite what was stock on this car. I believe the muffler that should be on this car has a special valving inside of it to where when you really get on it, the valving opens up and decreases the resistance inside the muffler. Now, these mufflers new from Acura, these just standard ones, because they're stainless steel and they never go bad, these were like 700 bucks. But the muffler for this car was like 1,100 because it had that special valving on everything on the inside. If I ever find one of those, great, but honestly, this made it sound more like a Legend is supposed to sound when I replaced it. Rear suspension is also quite awesome on these cars, and once again, the struts are not leaking, so leave them alone. It does have four-wheel disc brakes. I did also replace all the brake pads on this car as well. This car is very restorable, very close to what it was when it was new and it was stock, and that's what I want to see in this car. This car deserves to be what it always was meant to be, which is one of the finest cars Honda and Japan ever made, in my opinion. I suppose the only thing left to do now is to take it out for a drive and tell you the story about how I got it and how much I bought it for. Is it fast? Well, relatively speaking. I mean, it's not super fast, but it is acceptable. The manual transmission does a lot for this setup. I love this manual transmission. What this car really excels at is highway driving, like luxury highway driving. I took it on a trip to Tennessee recently, and it just cruises on the highway so nice. In fact, 6th gear isn't even really necessary until you reach like 70 miles an hour. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. I wanted one of these for more than 15 years, so how did I end up with it? Well, a friend of mine sent me a text about the ad for this in Craigslist, and I looked at it and they wanted $4,500. And I'm thinking to myself, I haven't seen these, you know, with no rust on them for like less than $8,000, like this particular car, because going back to how rare they are, we sold a lot of four-door automatic Legends during this time period, but very few coupes, and a lot of the coupes were 5-speed. I believe the 6-speed was only available in 94 and 95. So that's one of the things that makes this super rare. But the rarest Legend is the 94, 95 GS 6-speed 4-door, black on black. So black exterior and black leather interior. Most of them had this tan interior like this, but it's very rare to find those. And I think there's only something like 400 of them that were sold in the US new. So super rare to find that. As far as this one, I couldn't find any solid numbers about how many they made, but let's just say this car is super rare. Just go ahead and try and find one. And if you do find one, it's going to be stupid expensive, low miles cream puff. Now this wasn't that. You know, I got to the place to check it out and the guy was, you know, very accommodating, very nice. But immediately, you know, I saw the faded paint, I saw the aftermarket wheels, I saw the aftermarket intake, I saw the aftermarket muffler, and all these things started turning me off. But I said, you know what, let's just take it out for a test drive anyway, which we did. I took it out and drove it, and honestly, when I came back, I wasn't into it. You know, as much as I've loved these cars for as long as I've wanted one, I wasn't feeling it. I wasn't, as James May said, it doesn't give me the fizz. And I told the guy, I was like, you're not being unreasonable with what you're asking for it. I'm sure you'll get it, whatever, but it's not for me. And by the way, he also said that he was going to throw in the other 3 wheels because all he had was 3 out of the 4 original wheels. The 4th one went missing. He was going to sell me those for an additional $300. So $4,800, I was going to have the car, I was going to drive away, everything was going to be great. But when I got back from that test drive, I just said, you know what, it's not for me. And as I'm walking away, he says, okay, $4,000 for wheels, car, everything. That was really difficult to pass up. Then it became an investment. Then it became something that I could possibly flip and drive for a while and enjoy, because I didn't need this car. I mean, I've got plenty of cars, but as I keep saying, these are so rare, so hard to find, and such a cool car to have. I mean, I'm so grateful to have it because I really feel like it's an experience. And when I talk about, I did a video a while back about what kind of vehicles do you think you'll see at Barrett-Jackson 50 years from now. I think this might be one of those cars. Maybe even this one in particular, if I'm able to get the paint and everything straightened out. Although, strangely, out of all the cars that I have, and as much as I love this car, this is the one I'd probably part with first. And I couldn't really tell you why I feel that way, I just do. That's the story of how I got the car, how I ended up with it. I've since done a lot of work. As I said, I spent 2 days trying to bring the paint back just to where it is now. It was much worse when I got it. And it probably could still use some more work, but I'm not a body guy. I'm a mechanic guy, so that's mostly what I focus on. And I've addressed a lot of those issues, such as the muffler. I put the original intake back on. Thankfully, it came with that and I didn't have to track that down. I put the stereo in it. It's not the exact stereo that should be in this car, and eventually I hope to find one, track it down, and put it in it. Point is I just want to bring this back to stock, and if I could do things to take care of the appearance, I know that's going to bring up its value at the end of the day. So there we have it, my 1994 Acura Legend Coupe Type 2 6-speed. Love this car. I'll put links in the description to, you know, any pertinent stuff that I mentioned during the video. I'm also going to put a link to air@thecarguy.com, which is where I ask you go if you have automotive questions. Outside of that, I'm going to suggest to you to be safe, have fun, and stay dirty. I'll see you next time.